All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to episode 009 of the podcast. This is Joshua Davidson, not Eddie Contento, doing the intro this week. So a lot more enthusiasm as we kickstart this episode. But as mentioned, I'm here with my co-hosts, Eddie and Dan. Eddie, Dan, say hello.
Hello.
All right, and that was awesome how sick that was. We should have more episodes. But the man of the hour, the guy we have for this week's episode is Mr. Matthew Murrie. Matt, what's going on, brother?
And not much, a whole lot of everything. So thanks for having me on.
Yeah, we're pumped to have you, man. Our audience, as they start flooding in on Blab's pumped to have you. So yeah, we're going to jump right in. So before we get into anything else, as I really want to dive into your origins, your whole story to where you are right now, and I really want to go into your true perspective of running a startup, basically helping people simultaneously. Let's go into a little bit about who you are right now and what you do for those who have no idea who in the hell you are or what you're all about.
Nice. Well, thank you again for reaching out and having me on. My name is Matt Murrie, and my background's a writer and English professor, right? So I guess the attraction to becoming an entrepreneur is creating my own label and playing with words. So I'm the chief curiosity curator for something called What If 360. At its core, what If 360 is it's a process, and it's a process that engages human technology to transform problems into opportunities. And it sounds a little kind of out there and crazy and everything, but like we say, when you're surfing where the wave is going to be, it can be a little lonely, right? So we try to put it into context because we're very blue ocean as a startup. And if you're familiar with that blue ocean strategy, there's not a lot to really compare us to. But we're kind of a mashup. If you were to really look at our business model, it's really been modeled after things like TED Talks or, TED, but also people like Alex, the business model canvas, his name escapes me all of a sudden, Osterwalder, who just created a process and then was able to build an entire business around it, right? That's a little bit about what we do. We work with people from all over the world and all different backgrounds.
So let's start from your origins.
Mm-hmm.
So let's go into where are you from originally and kind of what your childhood like that bred you to become an entrepreneur like mindset. So talk about where are you originally from? Like what kind of environment did you grow up in?
Yeah, so I grew up in rural Missouri and son of a couple sharecroppers. No, I'm actually the son of I could go down that. Half my life, I think, grew up really at a hog farm just on the northern edges of the Ozarks. So, and I bring that up because I was the first, both my mom and my father are the first of their families to go to college, right? And their first entry into the educated workforce was in public education. So I grew up rural Missouri with this clearly an emphasis placed on education, but it was partly my parents' careers. And I just remember growing up as, man, I'm never going to become a teacher, right? Because all they do is bitch and moan about no money and no recognition, and it's all true. And I saw the work that they put into it. So I was like, well, I'll make my parents proud and not become a teacher. Little did I know becoming an English major was about the worst thing you could do in terms of But I converted that into a lucrative 2-year stint in the Peace Corps. And we're off, right? So, but it's funny because I majored in English because you can't teach just with an English degree. You have to be an education major. But I get in the Peace Corps, the first thing they do is they give me a classroom and they say, go teach. Next thing you know is, to make a longer story even shorter, but next thing you know, I find myself as a teacher and I'm now in education. And I find after about 15 years in education, it's weird. The last, say, 5 years or so, I started stumbling into entrepreneurship. And it all came about because I guess, thankfully, my perspective on education is all about lifelong learning and take your lessons everywhere and from anywhere, no matter who or what it is. And that's what pushed me into entrepreneurship. And about 5 years ago, I started learning about things like TED Talks, about people like Tim Ferriss, right? About startup communities. I started learning more and more about things called like social entrepreneurship. And all of these things are happening out there. And I'm a very curious person. And as I learn about them, one of the big takeaways I find is that there's this huge connection between what entrepreneurs are doing and educators are doing, especially in terms of innovation. but they're rarely talking to each other. They're rarely like hanging out in the same circles or collaborating. And it's like, that's a shame because, what if they could spend more time together and not just on social media, but in physical spaces. So that's a lot of, I think, the motivation. A lot of how my background led me to where I am. All these frustrations, I think.
Let's talk about it. So did you grow up with what I think Gary Vee calls it entrepreneurial tendencies, but did you grow up with like believing I want to do things on my own? Or was it more only way for me to branch out for what I've been taught is I need to kind of be more self-aware and be more individualized and do what my gut tells me versus what has been programmed society already carries mindset?
Yeah, good question. And it's funny because so many entrepreneurs I meet, it is about, hey, this is a way to go out on my own and do my own thing kind of stuff. And I get that, and I see why that you almost need that. But it's, again, another example where I'm an oddball. I think, and that's what the whole part of social entrepreneurship, because I think one of my attractions to entrepreneurship is, hey, instead of this is a way I can be alone, this is a way I can share and be a part of a team or become a part of like a community and like work, collaborate together, right? But there's certainly worth things. I have a friend, an entrepreneur, who said, I became an entrepreneur 30 years ago when I officially became unemployable, right? And he jokes about that. And I laugh, and there are some characteristics about me that I think I think I make the best employee in the world, right? But I think those characteristics make me the worst employee in the world to those employing me, right? And I think maybe there is a little of that pushed me to entrepreneurship.
So I guess one of the big questions, something that has recently been coming up in talks, is a lot of people believe like you're born to be an entrepreneur or not. Like the idea isn't so much like I was thrown into an entrepreneur, but I've always been individualized, independent. The concept of being an employee, like it's almost like death, like being.
Well, you're 100% right, and there is research on this. I think they can align different behaviors, everything, from like gambling and like extreme sports and other kinds of things. To me, it's a lot more about not even about risk, but it's about, because I think you're right, and you're onto something. People who are willing to take that next step and to truly become entrepreneurs. It's not that they're more risk takers. Trust me, I went to a lot of kids from high school who are risk takers, and they're not crushing it in entrepreneurship, right? They're just a little crazy. It's entrepreneurs, like we view risk differently. Like when I'm talking about, hey, I'm going to quit my job to start this new thing, to 99% of the people out there, it's like, oh, can we say shit? Can we say shit? I was like, oh shit, like there's something crazy. You're doing that because you're giving up all of this stuff that I personally hold dear and work my whole life for. It's a different risk, right? But to the entrepreneur, it's not like I'm not risking all of that. I've got all this preparation, and it's not just like I believe in myself, but I've got a plan. I've got an understanding of how it's going to work, right? So their view of risk, it's like when you jump out of an airplane. Not that I've ever done it, right? To most people, they go, "You're jumping out of an airplane. That's insane because it's like gravity. You're going to die." And the entrepreneur goes, no, hold on. I got this thing called a parachute. Like I know I've never used it before, but I read about it, or I took some training, and I have these reasons to believe that this parachute's going to help me get to the ground a little safer, right? And I think entrepreneurs are maybe just born with that gene or have that little understanding that there can be parachutes, or that if you use one correctly, it's not quite as dangerous. But.
Gotcha.
So do you think there was like a defining experience? Like what was the point where you kind of it went from, I think I want to be an entrepreneur, to I'm going into this? Like, was it during the Peace Corps time? It seems like you have a real affinity for that time. Is that when that experience kind of took place, or is it another point in your lifetime?
It's funny because it really is cumulative. It's like this pimple that just has to pop at some point. So I don't know if there's like one thing. But I think if there was, I remember I was working in academia at the time, and I remember that feeling of just realizing, well, here's my concrete ceiling. That no matter what I do, that there are not enough hours in a day for me to put in to either impress my boss or to make the quote unquote difference. Like I can make the difference all day and night, but to either advance my career or make me financially a little more comfortable or anything, right? Like this is the value that's been placed on you. This is how much not only we think you're worth, but we're going to keep it at that for as long as you're here. And I just remember, and again, it wasn't as like, they didn't say directly. I just remember all of these things kind of coming to me. And I just realized, look, you may fall on your face or jump out that airplane and realize the parachute doesn't work, but if you stay here, this is never going to change. And I think that was that was the one. There's always a moment, I think, when you realize things aren't going to change, you realize you got to do it. Yeah.
So, and then I'm curious too, like you said, English major, the teacher, did you kind of carry over, your skills and your expertise into what you're doing now? Or was it, I feel like, I started, with one thing and then I transitioned to a lot of different hats in a way. Like what's your kind of, what's your skill set and how has it kind of evolved as you've moved into this?
Yeah, nice. Well, it's kind of fortunate because I see so many carryovers between entrepreneurship and education. So it is, there are certainly things that I have no idea about, but that's part of it that I feel like if you're truly a lifelong learner and you're passionate about something and curious about something, with the technology that's available today, you can learn anything, or if you can't learn it, you can find the person or the people to help you get there.
So here's going right into the heavy hitting questions here.
Mm-hmm.
One of the things you often hear, and probably for a lot of the listeners on the show, those considered an entrepreneur, is that the classic education system, going to school, is not value prop for being an entrepreneur, which I actually do believe is bullshit. My personal preference, and I'll go into more. But at the same point in time, I could be looked at as a hypocrite because I dropped out of school. So did Eddie. Yeah. But there's a rationale to why, because, a little background myself, I was at a position where I felt like I could learn more in the real world, and I had enough security for a company growing to the point that it was actually preventing me from expanding my company and preventing me from opportunities, and learning technology and for school wasn't quick enough as what the real world was, which is my value prop. But I never stopped the education aspect. But a lot of people, and I'm sure you hear this all the time, is black and white, right? Which is you go to fucking school for the next 4, 5, 6 years, get that debt, and then go and build your business. And then there's those that say, you're wasting your goddamn time, go and build a business. And then I think I fall in the middle where you've already have an operation, you already have something going. But I looked at it from a value prop of risk and reward. You're talking about looking at risk, which is school was preventing me from opportunities due to the circumstances I was in, which is different. So, so Eddie even puts his sister is losing sleep right now over student debts. My sister has almost $1,200 a month in debts, in payments. That's before rent, car payment. I mean, I pay the same amount she's putting in debt in my own rent to live, right? So, this is a loaded question, and it's obviously very opinionated, but we're talking about education, which I think is not talked about enough in startups and entrepreneurship. I think this is a very important conversation to have.
Oh, certainly. And I'm 100% on with all of these questions. And the fact of the matter is nobody really has an answer. And that's kind of what you're saying. Everybody's on either or. And that's so much what we're trying to do. It gets frustrating at some point. But so much what we're trying to do with What If is, what if we can get rid of all the either ors in our life, right? Like it's a hybrid model. Like there's going to be situations where someone I think about it all the time. I went to a small liberal arts college. And where I taught was a small liberal arts college. Like they cap it at 1,000 people by design. They wanted, somewhere between 700 to 1,000 people. I never had a class in college over 25 people. That was like our lecture
I graduated
class.
in high school. Ripple capacity, what your college was then. My graduating class.
Yeah. Yeah. So, and the thing is I loved it. And it was perfect for me. Now, my wife just was finishing. She had the option of going there. She chose to go to a major state research university where she was one of 500 people. And now she's in medical school and doing all this. But that was what she needed and what was for her. And the point is like we're already having individualized healthcare, right? Which is another frontier. We're already getting you look at the Ubers and the every other thing we want to compare ourselves to. Everything's about individualized, personalized transportation, personalized manufacturing, personalized shopping, commerce, everything else. Well, why aren't we individualizing education? Why aren't we finding ways that it can be, like if you want a small class or big size? And this is where the frustration comes in. We've had this knowledge for now hundreds of years. It's only now we've had the technology to actually do it. Yep. And we're sitting with both thumbs up our asses doing nothing. That's what's
So
frustrating.
you bring up here, which I think is one of the valid things, which is and again, this is my personal opinion, but it's part to be a dialogue here, is a lot of schools are big businesses. It's all about now maximizing their dollar, right? And I think part of that problem is, you can't necessarily be a small school if you have the ability to be big. If your goal is at the same time, we want to scale, generate more revenue, which you can reinvest back in to impact more students. But you're right, there is a personal preference aspect. And I 100% believe, and you almost come up with a great app idea, which is imagine if you're a high school student, entering the criteria, what it is you want to study, what you want to learn, your class size, and it tells you that schools that will be compatible with you. For those listening at home, there's a future app idea. Just gave it to you. Lots of money there to partners for schools. So listen, I mean, not even that, digital age. I mean, look at e-education, right? I can think of Treehouse alone, General Assembly alone. Khan Academy is another huge one that's expanded, right?
The Teals Foundation, and
I will give one devil's advocate
No, totally. I'm not saying
that. Okay, so my partner for my startup right now, he's an ex-McKinsey guy, worked at Google, worked at Motorola, went to Ross, got an MBA, super smart guy. And the number one thing that I've picked up on that there is some value with school, and even if you want to take it a step by like fraternities, sororities, the network you get out of it and the people you can connect with.
Which I definitely didn't leverage right in school. Don't get me wrong.
Because that's one of the things I'll give as like a counter. Like I totally agree with the education.
No, but you're right there. You're right. But so it's twofold. One, I looked at my own personal situation. I commuted to a school. I didn't live there. So I wasn't part of that ecosystem as if you lived there, which gave me a total disadvantage to those that live there networking that way. And then two, should a lot of these people be paying $40,000, $50,000, $60,000 a year for networking? I could go to meetup.com tonight for $5 or for free and meet so many amazing people. Or I go to conferences, which I spend a couple $100 a month doing, and I'll meet the executives and vice presidents, the CEOs of these major corporations. Case in point, in a few weeks, we're going to have someone from Google on our show. I met him at a conference. I didn't go to school with the guy.
Yeah. Well, but you have a valid point about networking, but I also think there's so many ways, not just around it, but to do it in a better way. For example, I'm going to give a shout out because you're in Philadelphia. The String Theory School in Philadelphia, downtown, they have their school. Get this. It's a floor below a startup incubator.
Totally. Yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about.
Yep.
They integrate directly with, so a part of their education, so students go to this school without books, and a part of their lessons is not just working, but networking with actual living, breathing entrepreneurs. And here's where it gets super awesome. Those same entrepreneurs come down and learn from the students. Like what students? Yeah, that's the world we live in. Mm-hmm. There's no longer a teacher-student relationship. Yeah. It's just a facilitation of knowledge. Yeah. And like what you're saying is like we can do this, but we need to start doing it. We need to start blending local entrepreneurs with local education scenes. Like I'm going to call out every entrepreneurship professor in the country right now and say you are not doing your job if you are not creating lessons so that your students are creating businesses, apps, or whatever the fuck it is you're teaching them, that they can, at the end of a semester, potentially pitch or sell to somebody that can generate revenue, not just for them. We're not talking about making Mark Cubans, just so they can pay off their student loans. What if you took it as an educator? I was talking about that concrete ceiling. This is the kind of stuff they didn't want me talking about on college campuses. What if the responsibility of an educator, my job was to make sure a percentage of my students took what I was teaching and applied it in a way that they could pay for college before they graduate.
So listen, number one,
I knew what I'm talking about, right?
100% agree. That needs to be the mindset, because what you're then doing is you're also breeding here's the issue. We had a show about this a couple of weeks ago with John Boytnoff from Inc., USA Today. He's such a great dude. The media, for example, over-sexualizes, in a sense, the concept of raising money and exiting, and they don't focus on generating revenue, profitability. Schools could be a huge aspect of fixing that, which is you're building a business because you're building a viable business model, not because you're trying to raise your next round of capital because you're targeting an exit. That's not a fucking business, right? So going into your conversation, you're 100% accurate there. But I feel like, and at least from my circumstances, and I'm saying this for someone who gets paid by schools to come and speak at them, most of them are not wired that way. Most of them are not wired that way. And especially you're going even one step lower to high school, to primary school. Guidance counselors want the numbers of how many kids got accepted to school, not shooting big or going to those dream schools that are going to give you more to infrastructure, because to them it's the statistics of keeping their job. So there's a whole foundational layer that needs to be completely fixed, and it's not just this is the right idea, but it doesn't just like happen, right? It just is not going to happen overnight.
No, and it takes. The thing is that I've been learning. Guess who does get it? It's the students, and guess who the students are? They're the customers. So eventually they will.
But here's the thing: and I don't mean to put down students because I was one of them once. When you're 16, 17, 18, your mental ability isn't. I need a place I'm going to get experience. Oftentimes, there's a couple. What's going to be the most of my price range? What am I going to network the most? Which has the best frats, and where I'm probably going to get laid. Let's be real. That's a lot of statistics. Like those type of things are running your heads at that age. Yeah, and here's the thing. Then why are we forcing someone in that mindset to read Romeo and Juliet? No, you're right. No, you're 100% right.
This is my point. And again, this is from an English professor. My whole thing is let's change the whole thing. You find out what they want, what they're ready for, because you're right. Like, because half of what you're saying is on the outside, but they get it. The underside is the hustle. You're young, you have the energy. And even if your motivation is all these other crazy things, you have that motivation. Let's use that to teach you certain skills. And then once you have life experiences, let's integrate some of the humanity. So after you've had your heart broken a couple times and everything else, then you can appreciate it.
Listen, when I was 15 years old, the year before I started Chop Dog, I was dead set on becoming a civil engineer. First off, I fucking hate math. I would have been the most terrible civil engineer.
A terrible setup.
Yeah, it would have been terrible. So, but two, I always considered myself smart. Even as a kid, I was like, I feel smarter than most people my age. I was a fucking dumbass then, making decisions that's going to impact the next 60, 70, maybe 80 years of your life. And how many people do you know today went to school for a certain major degree and has nothing to do with what they're doing today, right? And I know this is all circular, but I almost feel like the concept of social norms go to college as soon as you graduate high school, that alone might be flaws of logic. Maybe you should learn as yourself what it is you want to do. And especially, listen, I think the last 5 years has opened up as an entrepreneur to be more open society to go and become an entrepreneur. Because I think if you went back 10, 15, 20, 30 years ago, you would have been looked at as if you're telling someone you're taking heroin. They would have been like, what the fuck is wrong with you? Why are you going to do your own thing? No, go work in a cubicle. Dan's laughing, but it's true. It is true. So social norms, but it's still not there yet. I mean, I think you're starting to see now like bigger suburban areas, metro town. But I'm gonna probably do a good example here and tell me if I'm wrong. Probably go to middle of Missouri right now. They tell an average high school student, how would you like to not go to school and go and just start your own business? Their parents will probably smack them across the face, right?
Yeah, we see it all the time. Yeah.
So I mean, we're not there yet as society either. Like the people listening to this, we're like that self-aware 1-2% of the world right now. It's like, oh shit, we can craft the world how we want it to be.
But the nice
you're surfing ahead of the wave, or where the wave's going to be.
But that's the nice thing, right? Everything's not so binary as it was once. It's not black and white. It's not yes or no. There's this gray area that's starting to build, and people are leveraging that and taking advantage in a positive manner.
Well, I will say this: General Assembly is helping open the doors. Treehouse is opening the doors, and there is a lot more practice school. So you're talking about Philadelphia, University City. Drexel and UPenn come to mind as people who completely mind-boggle me as amazing. They're opening up their own incubators now as infrastructure for schools. The Sierra Center, where you can work out of. You have awesome Benjamin's Desk and Philly Co-working is giving free membership to students to go work on their ideas. And that's another too, is building infrastructure around the students, not the school itself, but using it around. I've always considered if we reach a point as a company, I want to be able to give scholarships out to kids who are going to be entrepreneurs, who I believe need the infrastructure to go to school for specialty degrees, but we can use our resource and give them the ability. That's one of my long-term goals. So it is a step in the right direction, but it does make me concerned because I think, debt you can never declare bankruptcy on. It's getting more and more expensive by the year. I mean, the school I went to, I love Stockton University. I went for 3 semesters. It is almost double the price I paid for 4 or 5 years ago than it is today. In less than that time. If I went, could you imagine? That's incredible to me. It's mind-boggling to me, how that's justified. Maybe we won't need to do rent control to schools on how we have in society. Maybe that's a solution to stop this from becoming even more of a problem. Because if it keeps doing this price influx and lack of jobs, we're going to see what happened in the early 1900s, where all of a sudden, which might not be a bad thing, people going to get mentors instead, apprentices, specialty skills, and avoiding colleges altogether. And you might see that cycle, which could happen, where college becomes second class again, and then eventually it goes back when people are the value of college. That could happen if this trend continues.
Oh, we just might. And I think it was a year or two ago, but Mark Cuban actually even blogged about the the next big bubble market crash is the housing was the last one. The next big one is the student loan. Because you were just mentioning, add it up. You can't get rid of it. You have enough people who are paying more on a monthly basis decades after they graduate on their student loan than they are on rent, not even home mortgage ownership or anything else, like into their 30s, 40s, that's not a sustainable model as the population matures.
What a great time to be like a Sally Mae, money printing money.
The hair on my neck stood up hearing that name again.
I mean, think about that. Once upon a time, getting a loan for school is a good thing. Someone helping you so you can go to work the craft so you can get an ROI. They get their money back and then some, and you invest in your career. Now it's like you're going to drop $250,000 to go to school, and you're paying more than you would rent or mortgage a month. And now you can't get a job for most specialty skills because people are going to – also, one last thing before we go to what if. I think a lot of kids are going to school – like lawyers are a great example. I talked to my lawyer about this. There is way too many kids coming out of school for a law degree than there is lawyers needed in the world right now. And what's happening is two things. Legal professionals, their value is coming down, which is bringing in more quantity. There's a reason why legal used to cost so much is because people were really good. The second thing is you have all these kids who went to one of the most expensive majors you can get with a law degree, go to law school, who are working at fast food, working in a cubicle as an intern, who is basically just a glorified assistant because they have no job out there and they have no ability. And that's one example. Then there's the opposite. Dan, you're in the most lucrative job opportunity right now there is. As a developer, you can pretty much get a job anywhere, anytime. For every developer coming out of school, there's 10 developer jobs available.
Yeah.
That's the reality of it right now.
It's still a fresh market in a lot of ways.
Yeah. So, that's I also think we need to educate students and individuals more who are going to go to school. What's the reality? What is the market when you get out of school going to be like? Because we know what it's going to be.
Yeah. So that's a huge thing though, right? Because for-profit schools, they have no inclination to botch their own numbers if it's going to hurt their business. Maybe when you get out of for-profit, that gets better, but
that's the thing. Maybe we need to encourage a company like Apple, who, Apple kills off their own product cycles by making a new product they believe could kill it. Then letting schools dictate by hiding that information, encourage schools to be open about it, and create majors that are going to be for the future. Schools, after all, are supposed to provide our infrastructure for tomorrow, help foster smarter and better ecosystem too.
The thing is outside of a handful of positions is the jobs for the future, they're not going to require majors. That's the thing. It requires lateral thinking. It requires a liberal arts thinking, not the hyper-focused like major thinking. Now, there are always going to, always. You look into robotics, we'll talk about always, but there are going to be certain, like I mentioned my wife, who's in medicine. Now, look, she needs very much that directed focus. But again, it's fascinating. Her lessons, 90% of what she learns, she gets from YouTube and Wikipedia. It's project-based learning.
I probably got my high school diploma thanks to Google. Just being real. Google, Microsoft Word for grammar edits. Like, that's probably it.
Sure. So, but we're still teaching. And now, again, I want, before someone like cuts open my brain to operate on my skull,
No, you're not right. You're going.
I want to make sure they put 8 years or whatever it is in a single
specialty skill sets that require that.
But the vast majority, we're teaching them the wrong way. We're teaching them to think in a very linear way.
So it almost sounds like to me, when I look at it as an outsider, but have this kind of mindset education, the issue isn't so much education as much as we treat one as same for all education, when in reality, what you're doing depends on a different specialty set. And the issue is because schools are so big now and they're so automated, you're not going to just change a school overnight to do that. It's going to result in needing new universities and colleges to open up to redefine how it works, having the market go to them, and then shitting on the other markets like, I'm Harvard University. Oh, my God, why is attendance falling? I need to change our shit because these schools know what they're doing. Same thing as entrepreneurship. I mean, at the end of the day, we almost need, like, us as entrepreneurs to get enough funding and create a new school system that becomes accredited and change the name of the game in order if we're going to fix this.
Sure. Yeah, well, exactly.
So speaking of all this, let's go into what if. So talk about how what if started, the origins, and let's kind of jump right into it.
Yeah, so, it's like all good things that start with frustration. So, like, I was frustrated, but it's a serendipitous moment where it was both moment of awe, frustration at the same time. Like, I saw my first TED Talk, right? And I remember thinking, wow, this is super cool. There's like a market for big ideas. And the thing that fascinates me about TED as a business model is they were able to show that they could get a customer base. They could build a brand where their customers would give them their most valuable resource. In other words, their customers were paying them in something other than money. For TED, their customers were paying them in time. Like they could watch all these videos. Yeah. TED was able to use that and turn it into a business. TED's a multi-billion-dollar business. They're able to convert these eyeballs into sponsorships, into events, ticket-driven events, to media, to everything else, right? So that was incredibly encouraging for me. But the entrepreneurial problem, or to fix, or to whatever, to kind of tweak to make something new, is that what fascinated me about TED on the other side was they're sharing the most innovative ideas in the world in the most archaic format possible. In other words, the sage on the stage, the one person in a spotlight talking or preaching to a crowd of passive people basked in darkness. To me, this is dangerous for ideas because, one, it reinforces the idea that there's one person who's a superstar and I'm just the nobody sitting here listening. But two, what does it do for the way we exchange information, engage in information? It reinforces the idea that there's one person who delivers information and then our job is just to listen to it and then repeat. So it was butting up against everything that I had learned as an educator and all my background as a progressive educator, that I knew about what effective education was all about. So What If is about flipping that on its head. And our focus isn't on the one person on stage asking a question, but what are the ideas and, more importantly, actions that come out when you engage the crowd in those ideas. So we flip the whole model on its head, and not just TED, but really any conference or in-person engagement activity. It's how, so we implement this process where we start with curiosity. What are you curious about? And then we create these what if questions around these curiosities. And then those questions are delivered, unlike a TED Talk where they can go up to 18 minutes, they're 8 minutes or less for a number of reasons. But after 3 or fewer of these questions, then we go into breakout groups where everybody involved is now the star. And during this breakout group, we have a process that we take them through. And then at the end of this process, it leads to collaborative action steps that they're now working on. So instead of going and listening and leaving something being motivated or inspired, the whole what if process is to go from that moment or a pinnacle of energy, of inspiration and motivation, and immediately engage people so they're acting upon that. So instead of leaving just going, I feel great, people leave saying, all right, we're doing this, and we're doing that. And then we can repeat that process as often as possible. And because the process is descriptive instead of prescriptive, it's non-threatening. It's designed in a way to let introverts and extroverts participate. And it's a very holistic approach so that at the end, instead of just learning about information, it allows people to engage with it.
So how you're broadcasting this content right now? Like, how is the average What If conference? What is, like, how are you absorbing content, getting the content out there? Talk about the actual production side and how you're distributing that.
Oh, for in person, it's getting people together, and then we'll actually record it and then produce videos and clips, and then we'll share it through traditional social media. But at the moment, it's still so much just word of mouth on how people share it and everything else.
Do you? So, first off, is it a somewhat not one-to-one, but a reasonable comparison to say that you're similar to a TED, and the things you just described is kind of your unique differentiation in the way that you kind of take it beyond just the guy in the spotlight, or is there even more to What If than what you kind of just told us that makes you guys, unique to TED?
Yeah, yes and yes. So I think where we started 4 years ago, or 4.5, about 5 years ago, that's really all what I was doing, even before it was a business. Just like, hey, let's just get some cool people together, have great questions, ask them, and then see what happens. And then it's evolved through this process. And part of the evolution of it is I immediately went to local high schools and education communities. And I was on a college at the time. So there was this deep rootedness in education that we developed. But then as we transitioned from the education side, and let's just do like a conference or an event, into more of a business, we had to find out, well, how do we make money? Well, one of the things we found out was that so many of the people attending the events either worked for or had relatives who worked for different corporations. And they're like, hey, look, we're always looking for new ways to innovate or new approaches or processes and anything else. And that started getting us leads into that world. So we started getting more and more opportunities, not just to do public events, but private events, and using some of these processes for commercial training, corporate training, and now going back to education, to the whole professional development and working with educators. And all this has kind of led to the creation. So we have a book of What If. The book of What If, Simon & Schuster's publishing it in April. And this is creating, I mentioned the business model that I modeled after TED Talks, right? So that we get this audience, and we create the content. And that's allowed us to reach sponsors and underwriters and sell tickets and do everything else. Well, now that we have this book that's coming out, we can also develop very much what Alex Oswalder has done with the business model canvas to say, look, we've got this process that can be explained in 8 easy steps, and we can get it in the hands of literally, millions of people. So they're constantly using this in their classroom and at their work and everything else. And we can give them this for free, the same way Alex was with the business model canvas. Well, that can lead people to buy things like books or hire us to do the consulting and everything else. So then we can keep this core mission of offering these free services for communities, for schools and everything else, because the bottom line is being paid for by some of these contracted works, right? And where I get even more excited, because it's all about this entrepreneurial empowerment, is as we scale, instead of, like I was just giving a pitch the other day, is I literally try to model as much of what we do after other people. So our business model is modeled after TED and modeled after the guy who created the business model canvas, right? Like to me, like, what else can you do? Well, not only that, but the way we're scaling, I like to point to things like the Wu-Tang Clan. I don't know if you're a big hip hop fan, but like the Wu-Tang Clan serves as the model for how we build the team to scale. And what I love about the Wu-Tang Clan is they realized that instead of having a star and backup singers, or instead of having an employer and employees, if you engage entrepreneurs, you're all better off. And look how quickly you can scale. Like the Wu-Tang Clan is there's no, Captain Wu. It's just a group of independent artists. Yeah. But they realize there's a place they can come and create this platform that they can kind of dip their toes in, but it raises all of them, and then they can go out and do their own thing. And then there's these kind of loose connections, right? Well, the way What If is growing is in order to grow, all the things we quote unquote need to scale, we can do so by engaging entrepreneurs. And not like in a mid-level marketing scheme kind of thing. Like we have tools and processes that in sharing with other people, they can profit themselves and grow their own businesses or their own endeavors, all while coming back and helping the kind of the What If brand and movement grow. So I'm really curious now. I would assume, you said 4 to 5 years ago you started it? Yeah, I'm bad with numbers, so I'm losing track.
So you've had quite a few people come through, and you've gone through a lot of ideas. Do you have any, like, from your personal view, like really exciting ideas that came to fruition, after working with someone in like the groups and What If?
Yeah, like tons.
Exactly. That's picking you.
Yeah. No, because so many of them are like, we've helped, like the thing is funny, based on our previous conversation, I used to tell people all the time, like, what are some outcomes from What If? And I used to always shock them. Go, well, people go through the What If event and they quit their job and drop out of school. And just seeing the reaction of people going, oh my gosh. It's like, no, but they did so because they knew there was something better. But one of my go-to stories I always like talking about is about this time last year. What If was invited to facilitate, let's just call it the empathy side of the largest hackathon in West Africa. So in Accra, Ghana, they were putting on, there's this nonprofit that I had the relationship with. And they were organizing what was going to be the largest hackathon throughout all of West Africa. Wow. And they're like, before we do this, we want to distinguish ourselves from other hackathons and other like startup weekends and stuff. And instead of just bringing a bunch of people together and giving them free Wi-Fi and Red Bull, let's really try to solve the problem, and try to solve that problem from a level of empathy, right? So before we do the hackathon, they wanted to figure out, how do we get the participants to truly empathize with the issues that they were going to solve? So What If came in to be that empathy component. So what we did is we worked with the locals to identify people from different sectors. So we had people come in from the Bank of Ghana asking questions about what if we didn't have currency fluctuation issues that we do in Ghana. Someone coming in from health and sanitation, from an AgriPro, like, what if careers in AgriPro were sexy for millennials? People from all these different sectors. And they asked these questions related to these issues. And we took them through the what if process. So at the end of this 4-hour workshop, not only did they have a level of empathy, they actually had communication pathways, collaboration teams, and they actually had system level design plans on what they were going to take to the hackathon the next week to create. An example of that came of this is that they was given this spend a Peswa, save a Peshwa. And the Peshwa is like the penny in Ghana. And this whole thing of currency fluctuation, they were able to connect all of these dots and realize that there was a problem. There was currency fluctuation. And then they also realized they were connecting that to a potential solution, which was this thing called compounded interest. So how do we bridge this gap? They identified that so many of the stores in Ghana and Accra specifically only listed their prices in full dollar amounts. So everybody was walking around, nobody had change. So not only were they not aware of the power of saving even just 4 or 5 cents in their currency every day, they didn't even have the tools. So this campaign was so simple, spend a Peswa, save a Peswa, where they were able to create a single campaign, a single sentence that they could then take to someone from the Bank of Ghana who was there, who could take to his boss to get thousands of free plastic piggy banks that could then be taken to all the schools throughout Ghana. And then there was another person who worked with essentially the Better Business Bureau, the Chamber of Commerce, who said they have meetings that they could do a national campaign, a radio campaign that would encourage these business owners to start listing their prices. And the thing is, they didn't have to take their prices down. Instead of charging $1, they could start charging $1.25. They could make more money, right? Just as long as it was one off. And then these campaigns for the schools to tell the kids, hey, these pennies, these Peshwas, you save enough, you can make, you can go buy something, everything else. So everybody there was able to connect all these dots from different groups in a very short amount of time, identify the plan or the process, the pathway, but also the players and the people in their community that they needed to contact. And they left immediately with something they could do immediately.
Wow.
So that's like a small example, and we're looking for opportunities to accelerate these. Yeah.
Wow, that's awesome. And this is for the entire country, the largest hackathon.
Yeah, they can do. Yeah, now it's on them to execute it, but that's I'm only there for 3 days. But
do you follow up afterwards? Do you touch base with them a couple months later, hey, what's going on? How's life type thing? Or
there's some, and it's actually the organizing group. They've invited me back. They're expanding from a hackathon. They want to refigure they're getting larger sponsorships to actually work on the healthcare infrastructure throughout Africa. So that process, at least for them, worked well enough that we're one of the 4 components in this larger project. So,
wow.
So Eddie wants to know how many languages can you guess what if in?
Oh, off the top of my head, I'm going to struggle right now. It's a tricky question. I've learned more than 1 language, but that's a tough question. Yeah.
How many languages do you speak?
I've learned fluently. I'm struggling with English, so yeah.
Good for you, man.
Yeah, I speak English and Canadian, but
No,
I learned Spanish and French in college. I studied abroad actually in Spain and did some Peace Corps in Honduras, so I can get by in Spanish pretty well. But then I was in Peace Corps in Macedonia for 2 years, so I speak Macedonian at least while. By the time I left, I was pretty fluent. And it's similar enough to Bulgarian and Serbian and Croatian and some of the surrounding languages. I can kind of Bosnian I can understand. But technically about 3, 4 languages. Yeah.
So where's what if going? 10 years from today, where's what if?
Hopefully we're on another planet, but in 10 years, we're looking global. I tell people you gotta think big. So on one level is my goal is that, at least on the school level, the education level, my goal is that every school on the planet is doing what ifs, big or small, the same way that we do science fairs or that we do speech contests or we do, there's these kind of standard extracurricular activities that people are gathering and coming together at the school level. And my goal is that it's just a common, like a Kleenex or a Q-tip. Oh yeah, we what if the other day, or we what if at our school, and everything. Or we had an issue at work and we went through a what if on it. That's kind of where I'm looking for it to go.
So how many people are on the what if team right now? How many people work with?
Yeah. What?
So how many people on your team right now for what if?
Wow. Yeah. All right. So this is the issue right now. Right now, you're looking at them. I'm it. So my current hustle is I got to get a team. And as we all know, that team, unless their resource that they require is time. Unless you can assemble a super amazing team, that time requires money. So I'm currently raising funds to hire the team. Now, the good news is there's a number of outlets to do that. And also the good news is probably for the first time, you mentioned I've been doing it for about 4 or 5 years, but full time, like when I quit my job, jumped out with that parachute, only about 1.5 years, 2 years. So I'm still, but for the first time, I can honestly look people in the eye and explain exactly what I need. In the past, it's always like, you're just going crazy. Like, I just need money. I need money. He's like, what are you going to do with that money? I don't know, but it'll stop everything. Right? And there is some truth to that. But at the same time, it's this weird, what do you need it for? And a lot of times our reaction to I don't know or things are going horribly is just give me money, right? And it's that weird moment I'll never forget. I just woke up, or the light bulb's going off. And it's like, I don't need money. I don't need money to succeed, to scale. I need a team. And then you go down that line and you realize that team requires, but it's a different conversation that you have, I think. And it's exciting. And also being able to show how that team can really empower other entrepreneurs. I'm confident that message will get across.
So Josh Lopez wants to know, has money been your biggest hurdle so far?
So I'm sorry?
So Josh Lopez asked, and I'm going to follow up with this question, has money been your biggest hurdle so far? And if not, what has been your biggest hurdle?
Honestly, and maybe I'm still stuck in rut. I'm going to go with local community support's been my biggest hurdle.
Okay.
Not just now, but for the 4 years I've been doing What If, I have to get on an airplane to get a paycheck. We did a What If event here locally a couple of years ago. We had more people coming in from out of town than we had, not out of town, I'm sorry, out of state than we did from in my town.
Jesus.
But again, we're the belt buckle of the show me state. When we talk about we're a blue ocean startup, we're at one point it goes from I don't get it to now once people start getting what I'm talking about, it terrifies them because they start realizing that, oh no, like, look, what if is doing is shifting paradigms. We're not talking about changing the world, we're doing it. And when you think about the number of people, do a Google search on the University of Missouri, find out, like, we've been in the news. There's a lot of old white men who have zero interest in anything changing. And when they find out that there are people talking about change and doing change, it can get a little gnarly.
So how do you combat that? So how are you fixing that? How are you rewiring your thinking or fixing it?
You just don't give up. You don't give up. You look, at the end of the day, I realize what I'm, and maybe you're asking before, like how you know you're an entrepreneur and everything. I don't know if I'm an entrepreneur or not. I know What If needs to exist. Like, it's not me, it's beyond me. It's like, I was taking the Jay-Z quote out of context the other day, but I'm not a businessman, I'm a businessman. I know he's talking about it a different way, but it's so true. Like, I'm not, like, if I were a motivational speaker or a guru or something else, I would do that. I would, you know what I mean? It's like this is a business, and it can be a business, but it can be so revolutionary in how it operates as a business. That's what gets me excited. It makes me feel like there will be something. And I've done what ifs all over. Like, it's like I get I just blogged about it. The University of Missouri turned down a project of mine on the same day a team of MIT researchers approached me to develop it. Like, this is my life. And that's only the most recent story. On a regular basis, I get told no in my local community from business leaders, from the University of Missouri, from friends, from neighbors, from name it. Yet I get approached from people outside who are completely supportive.
So why do you think the reasons for that? Why do you think the local community is so unsupportive, yet the outside communities are very supportive?
Again, this is a lifelong Missourian. It's culture. It's culture. Yeah.
Is this let me ask, does it cost anything for what you're trying to set up with them locally, just with the event?
On their part, yeah, and like we'd go up to sponsors, but we'd also always give options. We've done free events, we've done paid events, we've given every option possible. Yeah. The
reason I say that is so I'm working with schools right now with my startup, and we're basically giving our product to them for free. We're helping their students, we're helping their alumni, and at one of the schools, the guy that heads up the entrepreneurship program will not get back to us. He won't do what we're trying to get him to do, and we're just like, aren't you supposed to be that guy? And this is like aligned with what you want, and we're not costing. And it sounds like you're going through some similar tribulations, and it's unfortunate.
It's tough, but and I'll be on the positive side. Like, the university is a big place, so in the last, I want to say 10 days, lo and behold, out of nowhere, guess who does want to work with me? The College of Education. So a lot of these things that I've been frustrated, and there's been turnover there, but it turns out the College of Education may be one of the most entrepreneurial places on campus. Mm-hmm. So as big of a struggle as it has been here locally, there are things here and there are people. It's just, I never thought it would take this much.
So it's almost finding the diamond in the rough is your mindset when it comes to local community.
Yeah, definitely. There's a diamond in the rough, and and it's what I was going to say. It's just like I've thought about other businesses, I've thought about other things in my career and everything else, and at some point, I think you start realizing where's the line between you and it is. And once I realized that this is an it and not me, it gave me a different level of commitment to it. I think, as far as and you hear people, and it's also you hear people give you feedback on the way it's affected their lives. And it's weird because of the way the process and the outcomes can be so personal. Like, we can have things like the Peshwa in Ghana, but it can also be so personal. Like, I dropped out of school, I quit my job, where not only the outcomes, but sometimes the feedback, there can be a year or longer delay on getting that. So, in this hyper like data-driven world with startups, like, A/B test this and give me this outcome right away and find out. It's a little different. It's a little difficult to do.
Yeah. So you're getting coffee yourself 5 years ago. What's the one tip of advice you'll be telling yourself?
Nice. 5 years ago, getting coffee.
And saying getting decaf is not an answer.
Oh no. You know what? I would say trust the process.
So I see you're a Sam Hinkie fan for the Philadelphia 76ers. I'm probably not going to get that joke. That's the slogan for the Sixers right now, for their tank.
They're going to need more than a process. They're going to need
Trust the process, man. Trust the tank. All right. What is your average day-to-day schedule like right now, from when you wake up to when you fall asleep?
Wow, there is no average. Partly because I do so much of my work is international, so I'm doing Skype calls at 3 a.m. with Burundi, for example. Typically, I've become a bit of an early riser. So typically, one way or the other, I'm getting up around 5, 6 in the morning. Yeah, it's good, and it's once you train yourself to do that, there's nothing like an early morning.
So what time are you falling asleep then if you're waking up early?
4 a.m. Oh, no,
yeah.
Not that.
I push myself. I try to get as close to that kind of midnight 1 o'clock. Like, okay. Midnight's my target. So I'm either like in some kind of position, and if I don't get enough sleep, I'll take little cat naps during the day. And I shouldn't be admitting this because that's 5 hours of sleep, or so 5 or 6. I know the importance of 7 or more.
Do you exercise?
Yeah. So I'm a runner, and that's the thing that's got me I like everything else, but running's the one thing I find I can kind of squeeze in anywhere, anytime deal. But
do you eat healthy too?
To the degree that running, I do. And see, this thing, I know I love to cook, and part of again, I'm a systems thinker, unintended consequences, right? The best thing about running, and again, growing up in rural Missouri, I grew up on a primarily gravy-based diet, right? So there's not a lot of health food. It's deep fried or gravy or both. But the thing with systems and unintended consequences, I found out that once I conditioned myself to run on a regular basis, there were certain, I got addicted to that. There were certain foods or other things else that weren't really conducive to that habit. And I think, then you learn like, oh, this starts feeling healthy. Now all of a sudden that feels healthy. The same with cooking. Once you start cooking for yourself and you're actually chopping up the fruits and the vegetables or anything else that goes in it, goes, oh, wow, this is kind of nice. It's fresh. It's almost meditative. Put in some music or a podcast and you're sitting there chopping up stuff. Like
now we're talking.
At least one podcast, right? And and it's like,
there's a really good podcast called The Podcast Out, man.
Yeah, right? See, and the next thing you know, you're like, well, I enjoyed that experience. My food tasted good. I probably saved a little money. I multitasked. I listened to this awesome podcast and did something I had to do anyway. So, yeah.
How do you balance work and life?
Maybe that's the other attraction to entrepreneurship, because they can be both. And man, maybe I won't even agree with that statement in the future, but I don't have kids yet, and maybe that's the big question. I'm married, but my wife's in medical school, so like we're barely. When do I see her? So maybe I guess like what life? But but I enjoy what I'm, and I feel like, and not to be cliche, but the work I do, like not all the stuff I'm learning to do, but the actual stuff I deliver, I enjoy. I feel like it's just an extension of who I am anyway. And I think a lot of entrepreneurs, you find that what they're doing, they truly enjoy.
All right, Dan, you can take your floor, Dan.
Well, no, I'm just curious. It's always, I was going to ask you, is what's your not work thing? What's your thing you're doing outside of work? Your personal, your fun, your hobby, or something like that. It's always interesting to hear different entrepreneurs.
Yeah. See, I'm getting bad at this. It used to be running.
Okay.
But now when I'm running, I'm taking notes. I'm taking my phone. I'm listening to a podcast. I feel like I'm maybe cooking now that I'm thinking about it.
Okay.
Because I keep taking notes when I'm cooking.
Okay.
If you could describe yourself using only one word, what would you describe yourself with?
Curious.
Nice. What was the worst failure you've had in your career, and how does that help you in the long run?
The worst failure, man, so many to choose from.
So I don't have success, man. It's not as fun.
Yeah, I know, right? I'm gonna try to think of something even. Wow, that's a tough one, because I wanted to think of something even more recent. All right, recently, you know what? Going back to trust in the process. Like, I think the biggest recent failure is it kind of just went back to having the confidence that I knew what I was doing. Let's put it that way. That I'm so, based on my relationship with education, I'm very open to mentorship. I appreciate mentorship and I like mentorship. But a big lesson I've learned is that I went through a phase where I thought all mentorship was mentorship I need to follow. That at some point you need to transition to, kind of selective mentorship. That's good advice. Maybe that's not so good advice. Or I'm going to test that, or I'm going to, that how I receive and process advice or mentorship, I think is I've had some failures there. Yeah.
You could go back in time, your entire life, and you could change anything. What would be one thing you would have changed?
You really tested him, Josh.
Yeah. I wish I would have met my wife a little sooner.
It's a good one. I like that one.
Yeah.
She'll like that one too.
Yeah, she'll like that one.
She's actually listening.
I'm not saying she'll agree with that.
Is she right behind you right now?
Yeah, no,
behind you right now?
She's gone. But I just realized, there's just Probably because I really don't have a lot of regrets. Part of my life philosophy, and I feel like I've done a pretty good job, is I really live without regrets. Like, and I think that's kind of helps me shape things as like frustration. Yeah, I get frustrated. I get frustrated with the best of them. But how do we use that as fuel, right? And yeah, there are problems. But they're never going to go away. So how do we look at them as opportunities? So I really try not to dwell on things in the past or regrets or, anything like that. But I could always use a little more time with her, so why not?
How do you prioritize life, business, career? How do you go about it prioritizing?
There's I don't.
I just do whatever pops in my head first.
I'm just a dog, and priorities are Slim Jims. Whichever one's the closest.
Someone tweet that.
Josh Lopez, is your chance, man. You got all those retweets. All right, how can people learn more about What If and learn more about you?
Yeah, well, we're the website's going through an upgrade, but I think it'll be live while it's going through there. So, whatif360.com, and you got a question? I'm Matt Murrie. I'm spelt differently, Murrie, so I'm pretty easy to find on social media and everything else. But if you have a question or want to learn more, shoot me an email. I'm Matt@whatif360.com, and happy to do what I can.
When's the next What If event?
I'm trying to think. We're gonna do one. I'm waiting. There's going to be one in June. There's going to be one in St. Louis at the Missouri History Museum, May 6th.
Okay.
Some high schools and middle schools are putting it together, which is always fun.
All right, Matt, one last question.
Yeah.
For all the listeners listening to this right now, what is one piece of advice you would give them that you think is relevant?
If you're going to be a bear, be a grizzly.
I like that.
If you're going to do it. There's no in between.
Matt, this was fun, man. We're gonna have to have you back on.
Yeah, anytime, man. Thanks a lot, and thanks for dealing with my technical difficulties. My last minute, I got technical.
Hey, you worked out on the actual call, man. It's automatic. It's the actual podcast. So, all right.
Next time, I have to bring my dog.
This is the podcast after all.
We're gonna have a dog every episode.
It is by Chop Dog. So, all right, guys. Matt, it's a pleasure for everyone listening. This is episode 9 with Matt Murrie on the podcast, brought to you by ChopDog.com. Dog as in DAWG.